Okay, this video continues in our exploration of principles of graphic design, specifically principles of composition. How do you arrange intentionally the elements of your design so that people look at it in the way that you want them to? Specifically, today we're going to talk about the compositional principle of flow, the order in which you want people to look at the elements of your composition. So we can see here, although we perceive a visual composition immediately, all at once, our eyes do not stand still. They move about, going from one part of the composition to another. The intended path that the designer wants a viewer to take across their composition is called the flow. And we can see here in this McDonald's ad, I first look at the player's face because human faces, animal faces, eyes are incredibly appealing. People almost always look at them first. So I start out with the player, and then I move to the headline because this headline here is bold and black and high contrast and in the center upper area. I then notice the blue McDonald's logo in the background. It's softer, it's paler, it's not as high contrast, and it's not entirely within the frame, and it is layered behind all the other elements. Finally, the last one I look at is the subheading here, like Lionel Messi. So notice I'm going player to headline, headline to logo, logo to subheading. That is the flow that the designer has created for this advertisement. Another way that you can think about flow is if you've ever watched videos or studied eye tracking. Here is an eye tracking picture from a website where they basically have a camera that's looking into the eyes of people as they look at the website. The path of their eyes moving around is then converted into this visual representation and laid over the website. So what you see here with the red lines is the viewing path or the flow of users looking at this website. The circles of varying sizes indicate where they stop. So the bigger the circle, the longer they stop and look at that area. But you can see the sort of varied and somewhat chaotic looking path that they travel across here. This is what you're trying to control. When viewers look at your design, what do you want them to look at first, second, third? And sometimes you might want to create tension for a unique effect by having elements compete with each other. So maybe 1 and 2 are really clear, but then you have competing elements for 3. Or you have all 4 elements that are completely equal. These are things you can do as well. Here are some common flow patterns. First, you have a heat map, which is sort of like what we just saw, where the increasing color from blue to yellow to red indicates how long people looked at a particular area on a composition. And if you notice that the heat map is very similar to the F pattern that you see right next to it. F pattern is where people start in the upper left-hand corner, which is for countries that read left to right, top to bottom is always kind of the strongest place to start. They start in that upper left-hand corner, then move to the upper right, back to the upper left, down 1 level to the mid left, over to the right, back to the mid left, and then down. So it creates a pattern like an F. Another common design pattern is the Z pattern, upper left to upper right, and then crossing down to mid left and over to mid right, creates a viewing pattern like a Z. The layer cake pattern shows people jumping around, looking a little bit at the top, a little bit at the middle, and then all the way across at the bottom. Spotted pattern has 3 areas indicated, going from upper left to upper right to mid left. What they call a marking pattern is when someone zeroes in and focuses on just one area. The bypassing pattern is skipping the large images that you might think are what would attract people's attention, but it's just reading key words and phrases from the text. And then the commitment pattern looks at every single thing on the page. Typically what you want to think about as you are designing are things like the F pattern and the Z pattern, or combinations of these that might be competing elements. So remember, this is called flow, and flow uses the principle of hierarchy. Hierarchy is just the idea that there are multiple ways to communicate the order of importance among your elements. And this hierarchy, this order of importance, becomes the viewing order. The most important thing on the page is where you want people to start viewing. So you can see here a really obvious way of influencing hierarchy is with size. We tend to look at the bigger image on the right here before we look at the smaller image on the left. Here we can see the image on the left and on the right are now the same size, but on the left it has a decreased opacity. It's somewhat transparent, and so that makes the image on the right stronger. The image on the left also has less contrast and less brightness than the image on the right. So opacity, contrast, brightness are all ways that you can increase the hierarchy to say, I want you to look at this object before that object. Another way to communicate the hierarchy is in the positioning. Here the images are the same size and the same opacity and the same brightness, but I've put one in that strong upper left-hand area and one in the lower right-hand area. So given the reading patterns in Western cultures, you would start in the upper left and look at that image before you would look at the image on the right. And finally, here are a couple more. These aren't all, but these are just a couple more ways you can indicate hierarchy by using various effects and by using color. So the images are again the same size, but on the right we have a border or a stroke around the image. We've added color to that border, so it's purple. We also have a reflection down beneath the image. All of these things together and individually draw your eye to look at it before you look at the other image, giving it the purple image more hierarchy and making it the image you look at first in your flow and then second in your flow would be the image on the left.